And today we're going to be talking about printables and Thang. So, both the Prusa-owned printables platform and Thangs, which is a smaller rival, have announced membership tiers. And that is that the companies will take a cut, and then designers will get money from members and release exclusive models to only those people that subscribe to them. So this is one of these things where it could be a huge fork in the road in the 3D printing industry. And it could be a really, really big moment if we're looking back on this in a couple of years from now. Now, a lot of shareable platforms have been experimenting with subscriptions, and no one's gotten it quite right. And people have allowed you to pay for one model, subscribe to a person, to support a person, and no one's kind of gotten them quite the right recipe where that makes people kind of content in parting with their money, and other people content in making more and better stuff. But it's very, very seductive for people to kind of like come up with this platform and come up with this kind of recipe and the right recipe. So it's a question of time before someone gets it right. So there's a risk here. Like, what if it's all of a sudden dice are popular, or figurines, and we only start making figurines and dice, or a great percentage of the total activity of our community is devoted to that because that's what makes money. And all of a sudden, all the upgrades to 3D printers and open source hardware for the developing world, no one starts making it. That could be a risk. We can have a very narrow development only around things like iPhone cases. And money and effort can be directed at a lot of people's very, very specific cases, rather than the great big diversity of things, this craziness of all these different things that people are making for themselves and then sharing. Right, that could kind of be reduced, so we could make a great diversity. The real thing of 3D printing as an inventive tool is to be able to make lots and lots of different things. And if everyone starts just making iPhone cases, then we're not going to make the next generation of completely crazy stuff like farming robots or build your own rockets or whatever kind of stuff. So the diversity could be harmed. There could also be a lot of people that all of a sudden try to do this membership tier and sharing, and then they get like, for their 40 hours a month or whatever work they put in, they get $10. So that could really be super demotivating for them. At the same time, this could be huge. There could be some people that are now just doing this as a hobby, and all of a sudden we have a cadre of 1,000 people who are doing open source innovation full time. And some of these people could become millionaires, and then tens of thousands of people would join them. It's one of these things, like, I think it's underappreciated. If someone gets a shareable recipe right, then we could see this unlock a whole stream of 3D printing innovation. At the moment, it's a risk. It could lead to less open source sharing, or it could be a huge new wave of innovation. It could replace companies. We could never have companies again, and we could just use 3D printing services and designers to make all the things in the world now. Is it going to be either of those things? Probably not. It's going to be something in the middle, but I think it's really a key point here. Thangs wants to take a cut of 8%, and printables about 10%. And we have yet to see if this will be successful, but keep watching that space. Another important thing is Deutsche Bahn. Deutsche Bahn, Germany's railway, has been pioneering 3D printing for a number of years for maintenance and repair. This has been difficult because actually the parts they need are much larger than the parts we're used to making. They also have their own certification regime, and parts sometimes have to last 20, 30 years. And things like weight saving and things like that don't really matter as much to them. They don't tend to use like the exotic materials that we're used to using. Tend to use steels and things like that. So they had to go their own way, and they don't. This Mobility Goes additive kind of consortium to help them. And now they've released a little bit of their progress. And it's very, very encouraging. They have a digital warehouse with 1,000 models in it that people can order again and again. And they've produced over 100,000 3D printed spare parts using a number of different technologies. The thing you see in front of you is huge. That is a pellet, a Euro pellet on the bottom there. And it has approximately, it's by around a 1 cubic meter in size. It weighs 570 kilograms. And it's a sand casting, kind of indirect cast part. It's used for shunting locomotives, and the lead time on this part used to be 10 months, and with 3D printing it's 2 months. Still a considerable lead time, but I think this is a realistic part, but it's really pushing the envelope in the types of things, the size of things we usually make, so it's nice to see this. The company touts that they'll save money with this, and they also think that there are lots of environmental benefits. Less CO2, less effort tied up in stock, less wasted material. And yeah, this is a really exciting space. I think that rail is something more and more people should be paying attention to. The next news item comes from China, and this is the Barberio Colella Architetti, Angelo Figliola, and Zheng Hui Chen have made the Flowin bridge. It's a footbridge they hope will be installed in the Fuxi River in Mogashan in China. Now, this is not 3D printed. What is 3D printed is the formwork. And what they've done is they've made the formwork in such a way out of blocks. So it's not even one big thing. It's a bunch of different blocks of formwork. This is then used together with EcoPact cement that's from Holcim. And what is the exciting thing is that formwork could be reused. So that could save there's a lot of environmental benefits. You don't have to build a giant wood thing that then gets destroyed. No, we could actually reuse this polymer 3D printed formwork. Now imagine you had to make a lot of these bridges. That would be very, very exciting indeed. Now, there's a lot of 3D printing interest in houses and direct 3D printing in houses. This is so much more exciting to me because houses we could make in traditional methods. It may be cheaper in some instances to 3D print, but think about these bridges, right? These simple, small bridges, foot bridges, bicycle bridges, small car bridges, small bridges over little streams and little rivers all over the world. Tens of thousands of these bridges exist, right? A lot of these were built in growth spurts, right? So, for example, in Europe, thousands and thousands of these types of bridges were built out of concrete after the Second World War and the decades after the Second World War, thanks to the Marshall Plan, the rebuilding of Europe. Think of countries that were in ashes, like Germany and the Netherlands, rebuilding themselves with these new concrete building techniques. All of these bridges are nearing the end of their lifespan, and they have to be replaced. Similarly, in a country like Korea, which industrialized very, very quickly. There was a wealth gain there that is almost unprecedented in history. And they built a ton of stuff in the same area. A lot of that stuff, like the low-cost apartment buildings and stuff, have been replaced one by one as people want better housing stock. But a lot of these infrastructure elements, especially these small provincial middle-of-nowhere ones, have not been replaced. Same thing with Japan, where we saw a really quick, rapid industrialization of the Second World War, and also in China, where we see an unprecedented, incredible growth over the past couple of decades since the 70s. So these countries all have a lot of infrastructure that will be in need of replacing. In Europe first, of course, before then a little bit later Japan, and a little bit later than that Korea, and then subsequently in China. Now, however, 50, 60 years later, labor is more expensive. Getting places is more expensive. Everything in these things is going to make them more and more expensive. So you could directly 3D print a lot of these things. That could be really exciting. But imagine just having a factory that 3D prints bridges in the factory, or print the formwork and then make tons of these bridges. Make them kind of cookie cutter style. Imagine this bridge, and then you just add a couple of blocks of the formwork, make a longer version of it. That to me is super exciting, and is something that I think could save a lot of money. And the difference is, maybe you could not replace all these bridges if you use traditional methods. And with 3D printing, you may be able to save enough money to replace all of them, which would make your country much safer. So I think that's that makes it much more important to planners, not only on the city and town level, but the regional and national level. People are going to take an interest in this. Whereas the housing thing is like, it's cool, and maybe you sell houses, and maybe it is the future, but the houses are going to get built anyway if we don't 3D print them. This is a big, big difference, I think. Anyway, this was another edition of 3D Printing News Unpeeled. I hope you enjoyed it and found it valuable. Have a wonderful day.